Thanks for again to all of our presenters, and let's get right into our panel conversation with truly some experts on the topic. So Will and the Gamer Sensei, guys, come on down. We're going to go right into it. So we'll try playing into about 40 minutes, and then we'll go to finals. Thank you, guys.
Nice, thank you. Testing. Ah, we're good. How's everyone doing tonight? It's working. Good. We're all good. All right, so I guess we'll start with some introductions. My name's Christopher Cameron Jacobs. My friends call me Cece. I am Chief Operating Officer of Gamer Sensei, the world's first full-service esports coaching platform. I've been in the business for around almost 3 years now, so I have a background in esports. And I'm just really excited to be talking to people today about, opportunities for what I feel are going to be the inevitable merge of, two worlds, esports and virtual reality, augmented reality.
Hey, I'm Ben. I'm Ben, Alpha Coach for Pousada. So I'm a coach for Gamer Sensei, as well as a full-time teacher. So I'm always trying to figure out what I can pull from VR and try to introduce into a classroom, try to make it more interesting, and then hopefully bring it into a competitive scene and start actually coaching it, if possible, with those same students.
Oh, I can help you with that. I'm Will Roberts. I'm the founder of Augmented Pictures, and also we just started a VR eSports League last year, the VR Diamond League. And the Diamond League is pretty much the competitive scene in New York City. We're trying to build a competitive scene in VR, and also from high school, college level too. So we're looking at things in high schools and colleges, trying to get people into VR and also competing and learning how to make VR content. So I can dive into that too. Once we get going. Just looking at esports in a different way, not just competing, but also like contributing to the ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's something that we've actually been working on at Gamer Sensei. A space that we've really been exploring is the propensity for esports and gaming in general to impact people's lives, whether they be young professionals, looking for work, going to school, getting degrees in technology verticals. And more recently, for those of you who may or may not, know too much about esports and how it relates to school and education. More and more often these days, schools across the country, they're starting up their own esports teams for titles and games like League of Legends, Overwatch, Hearthstone. Those are the most popular titles these days, and even Fortnite as well now. But a lot of the time, starting up an esports program at a high school or college is a lot easier than starting up a basketball team or saying I want to start a football program at our school. It's a lot cheaper. You just need 5 computers, or sometimes less, depending on the game that you guys are fielding. And colleges and educational institutions across the country these days, they're actually looking to invest and see esports as a way to bring talented young people to their schools and universities. And so that's one thing that we've kind of been doing at Gamer Sensei, is we've been partnering with colleges and high schools across the country, trying to pair their esports programs with professionals like Ben, who are experts on game knowledge and able to help coach their team and develop their players. And eventually create the high school to college pipeline, much like traditional sports already has that sort of built out pipeline. But as far as esports goes, and even like augmented reality too, I feel like there's I think it's inevitable that the two are going to merge at one point. And so that's one reason why we're here today.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get esports started going at the high school, middle school, and elementary level, and it's been really interesting to see. We just started our IT department and trying to get as many students involved with it. I actually had an 8-year-old who decided that he wanted to try it out, and man, he outperformed some of the high schoolers, which is amazing to watch. And those are the types of kids that we want to be empowering. We don't want to say, look, video games are this thing that's going to hold you back. It's going to rot your brain, is the thing we all heard, at least when I was that age. And we're trying to say, look, this is something you can do with it. This is something you can learn. And then we talk to the parents and we say, this is a scholarship they can attain. And oh, their eyes light up when they hear that one. So we're trying to link up different high schools with colleges, try to get different scholarships going. And there's so many platforms that are supporting esports at this point, offering scholarships for them, as well as just saying, look, this could potentially be educational as well as just fun. And especially with Fortnite, I'm a Fortnite coach. Lastly with this world competition that we just had, man, it's become very lucrative. So we're trying to get our foot in the door and see how everything's going.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on both of what you guys said too, like building a pipeline. Because right now, like there is no like minor league, there is no like a path to pro. Like there's a path to pro in some like certain games. You look at like Overwatch, things like that. But even in VR, like there's no pro league in VR. There's amateur, like, there's little pockets of tournaments. And what we're trying to do is trying to build like a pipeline to pro. It's like to starting off, we can kind of start off in the middle. So you have a league that's in like city to city, but also we can start off in college too. So the college structure is already kind of built. So there's schools that hate each other. You know, Oklahoma, Texas, you got Florida State. So you have to build in rivalries. So what do you just match that to already built in, like rivalries and just put them together and just bang heads with each other. I think that's awesome. And like, and also like just building, just kind of trying to build the esports industry alone, not just with like pro gamers. Because I feel like out of like 100 kids in a esports program, only like 10 of them will be actually really good. But you gotta actually have the ecosystem around them. So like, say if you had a college team, so there's 100 kids that sign up, 50 of them be active, and 10 of them are the kids that play all the time. So what happens with the social media branding? So you got kids that are marketing students that are part of the ecosystem. So now, to be a part of the gaming club, you don't have to play the game. So like, you can go and leave school with, oh, I worked on a gaming campaign with my school, and this is what it looks like. Trying to build an ecosystem is kind of tough too, but I think that's the longevity. That's how we build longevity in the sport.
Definitely, yeah, and I'd like to touch on that too. A lot of colleges that we've been talking to, they also use, their up and coming esports programs as a way to give their students hands-on experience in, whether it be, social media design, even just like technology, cutting videos, producing, a final end product. And many of them too, they also have, legitimate, like, beautiful, casting studios. And I feel like esports is one of those things that, many people can get involved, and people that are training to be professionals in whatever, kind of vertical it is, that they're looking to, eventually start a career in that vertical. A lot of different places see esports as a way to, as an opportunity even, to give their students hands-on experience. That's going to eventually help them in their career, postgraduate programs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and just to touch on the accessibility, that's one of my favorite things about esports is I remember when I was in school and I wanted to get into all these different sports, but you have to find a high school that's going to offer those sports and offer, a decent program for those sports. When you want to get into an esport, you can just log in from any computer at home, preferably one with decent specs. We've all had the latency issues. And then you can actually hop into leagues that people you've never even met. And I have friends from India, China, I have students from Africa. It's so spread out, but you're able to all be on the same team together, work together, and actually meet that goal without ever meeting in person, without having to look for that physical location. So then when you're in high school, it's so easy to then transition into college, or when you're in college, it's so easy to transition into that pro league. Hopefully we can get a minor league soon. And then that accessibility is so open for kids, and that's really the focus that I'm looking for.
Right on.
Let's see, what else? Do you guys have any we can open it up to questions too, because we, do you want to field a couple of questions in front of us?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
First question is, Can you describe the kind of esports that are popular in schools? Why who plays them? Are they athletic? Why do the schools like them? And let's leave that for that.
Yeah, for sure. The types of games that are usually esports programs start out with are the two or three big ones right now are League of Legends, because it's it's one of the first games that actually put esports on the map. It was one of the first games where people really started hearing they sold out Madison Square Garden for this event kind of a thing, right? So League of Legends is a really popular one. Overwatch is also incredibly popular, and Fortnite is also becoming very popular now. The reasons why these different schools choose these different games, I don't think it has so much to do with the type of game, like it does to a certain extent, because all games are different. League of Legends, for example, you have 5 players. It's a 5v5 match, 5 people versus 5 other people, and basically I think the thing with esports is not so much the games, it's more so the fact that there's a lot of parallels and similarities between esports and traditional sports. It's very every game is very strategy based. You're learning to think on your feet, work together as a team to accomplish a certain goal and compete against a different team who's obviously trying to, execute their strategy as well as possible. And as far as on the coaching side of things as well, there's a lot of similarities there, and even opportunities, I think, post graduate, and even for students that are just very good at the game. You don't necessarily have to go pro in order to to start a career in esports. As I mentioned before, a lot of different colleges, they're not so much about the game itself. It's more about the things that it teaches our kids, which are teamwork, working together to accomplish goals, strategic thinking as well, outthinking your opponent, thinking 3 moves ahead, 4 moves ahead, that sort of a thing. So I think it's more to teach students and to teach players in general about those sorts of intangibles rather than the game itself.
Yeah, and I would just answer that as well. I would say one of the major distinctions between a game and an esport is games tend to be, you have a problem and you have to try to solve it. And there's usually a lot of different ways to go about that. But they tend to be somewhat linear, and they tend to, once you achieve that goal hasn't changed, or you're going to get to the next level. Whereas with an esport, it's always going to be players against players, so skill caps are ever expanding. So if you have somebody who was the #1 player of a game like League of Legends, say 5 years ago, they play against an average player nowadays and they haven't played in 5 years, they are going to play terribly. Because all of a sudden, in those 5 years, the game has entirely changed. And that's not because the developers have done very much to change it. They'll do small tweaks. But it's because the players keep finding different strategies, different exploits, different little things that they can add into their game. And that's what makes it so special and so able to mutate and change.
Evolve.
Yeah, to evolve.
So one of the things on the VR side is too, so I do a lot of pop-ups in schools and stuff too, so tournaments, middle schools, high schools. And one of the biggest things is spectatorship for VR. A lot of games aren't spectator friendly in VR right now. So you have a first-person view of someone shooting, but the person outside can't really see what you're shooting at or from a third-person view. So and the game is so complex, things are happening so fast that they don't know the rules or anything. So it's just a bunch of things that's going on. So there's a few games that I like to choose for people to play that are spectator friendly, that allows people that don't know how to play the game to learn the game, and just have fun with it too.
What games?
So Beat Saber is a good one. So you see that it's a great spectator game. Creed is another one. Creed is boxing, so you can do two one-on-one and just melee each other for 30 minutes, and it's amazing.
And that'll work well in schools because all of a sudden you don't have kids hitting each other.
There's so many things I've been to 3 schools back to back, and you can see every time we went. So we'll have VR games, then we'll have Super Smash Brothers and Dragon Ball Z. The first time I went, I have like a little group over here with the VR, and a big group over here with Dragon Ball Z. And as I kept going, like kids kept looking at me. This is like actually cooler. Let me go over here. So then by the end of like this like four week circuit, I call it. You had like everybody playing both of the games, but you had kids like jumping up and down for the VR stuff. So you can see, and the parents like it too. The parents saw it as like my kid is getting a workout.
They're actually moving, not sitting on the
He's
keyboard.
actually
So,
moving.
it's
He's
great.
getting a workout, and the mom comes over. Where can I buy this thing? Is this out? Is this out yet? I'm like, yes, you can buy it. Best Buy, Amazon. Yeah, and this is just, I mean, it's just amazing to see like just the transformation in between those 4 sessions of kids, and they're just kind of just their minds are blown. So I feel like yes, it doesn't like there's some hurdles in VR, but I feel like with time we'll overcome those. We got a lot of smart people doing a lot of smart things in VR. You know, like the stuff that I'm like I want to build a league for my friends, like the VR barber.
The bizarre barber.
Yeah, like VR barber. Yeah, to kind of put their games on top of it. So like yeah, so there's like I mean like one of my passions, my things I love to watch other people succeed, and that's like the root of me starting this league. Like I like to see people have fun, and if you compete and have fun, I mean that's good. That's it.
And we saw another question. Let's try one in the back.
So based on the ecosystem that made League of Legends, Rocket League, other legacy esports successful, what frameworks, partnerships are missing that's from making, we talked about spectatorship, what else is still missing in order to make a successful ecosystem for a VR esport?
I think the biggest problem as far as even like people see esports as already having been very successful in having those sorts of exactly what you're talking about, and to a certain extent it is, but it's still like esports is always still developing. The biggest problems in the esports realm right now is with games like League of Legends, and even like traditional sports. Like obviously there are a lot of similarities and parallels, but there's also some things that are really not similar. I.e., nobody owns the game of basketball. No one owns the game of baseball, right? Like, so you have those sorts of difficulties, and then when you have other people trying to come in and start different leagues, that sort of thing, I think that developers need to be open to collaboration and partnership with different people who are trying to, help develop and evolve their game to, bring it to the masses. And that's something I think that with traditional sports, it's difficult for us to, very few people know, where basketball originated from, that sort of thing. But, I think at the end of the day, it's a group effort, right? And different sports and including esports, they're gonna it takes a lot of people throughout the world that need to be open and honest with different partnerships, to help kind of esports get to the next level. And it's very very similar, I'm assuming, for VR as well.
Yeah, because I think that's the advantage that VR has. So traditional games been around for what, 30, 50, 60 years right now. So we got like Blizzard, everybody's competing with each other. So right now, like VR, like I can call the creator of Beat Saber and say, hey man, I want to play your game. He was like, okay, cool. But like I can't call Blizzard and say, hey,
You can't dial up Riot,
so the competition is different, and also like VR, the communities are different. Like we all love each other. Like we want to help each other. So we trying to like screw bolts and nuts and try to build this thing. So, but like the traditional games, there's baggage there. There's big dollars. There's a lot of different things that we don't have to deal with. So we're still on the ground, but I feel like there is a curve that we're hitting right now. It's going to be yeah.
And I think one.
Sorry.
You all go there. I was
I think one major framework we're missing right now is accessibility. VR traditionally has been you need a very high-powered computer, and then you also need to buy all of your VR specs. And now things are starting to change, especially when it came to League of Legends. It used to start out with kids would get it, and they tended to be sort of young. They'd play on their parents' computer. I mean, I've literally seen League of Legends played on a smart microwave before. You can play that on anything. Yeah, I've actually seen it powered by a potato. There's crazy things that have happened with League of Legends. So that had such easy accessibility. All of a sudden, everybody could play it, and then it started getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, advertising played a large role there too. But now we're seeing a slight shift when it comes to games. We have games like Overwatch, which tend to be particularly heavy on a computer. And then Fortnite, where if you really don't have that 10 ping, if you hit 11, all of a sudden you're going to start raging because of your lag. And now what we're seeing is a lot of kids are having very high-tech gear. And it's becoming more accessible to get this high-tech gear. And it's being pumped out a lot more frequently than it used to be. Yeah, and affordably. And so we're able to start seeing a shift towards VR because computers have become so ingrained in our society and so easy to get. And on top of that, we just had the Oculus Quest come out, and that's going to change the whole game. All of a sudden, we don't have all these cables tying us to computers, and I think it's only about $400. So now we're really set for a scene where we can shift into this VR style, and now we just need all the games there with the frameworks that allow for the heavy, intense competition, where hopefully there are some bugs, because bugs are how sports work. There's always going to be things that you can take advantage of, and that's what the players are going to need in order to spin off of each other and be able to set that infinite threshold of skill cap.
Another question?
It was on that same one. It was actually on the hardware side, but the question is there a normalizing factor when you're setting up the esports? Do you find, whether it's sponsors, things along those lines, that having that piece of gear, that other thing, that bandwidth, puts you at advantage, disadvantage, and how do you deal with that when you're setting up a network?
Yeah, you would probably.
And yeah, there is definitely going to be a big difference between the two, but it's the same idea with sports. I mean, if you see a whole bunch of kids playing soccer on a dirt field with a ball that's barely inflated, they're not going to be able to then transition into as competitive a field as people who have these nice manicured lawns and the professional gear and their cleats and everything. But you do still see those types of kids making it into the pro league sometimes. It's just harder. So now, as we transition from it's very difficult to get computers, very difficult for schools especially, now schools are starting to build programs around it. Computers are a lot cheaper to buy. My school, I just am in the process of fully upgrading all of our IT department, and it really only takes $5,000 to $10,000 at this point. Whereas in the past, if you really wanted to get the high-tech stuff, it would have been way over 10. And that's what's making it more accessible, because there is that big difference between hardware. If somebody's at 100 ping as compared to somebody who's at 10, there is just going to be a difference in what you're able to do. For instance, I have a student in South Africa. There are 0 Fortnite servers in Africa. Just the entire continent has none, which is a ridiculous idea. So he has to play on European servers. So he's averaging about 200 ping. Man, this guy, he can play really well, but he's playing against players with 10, 20 ping. All of a sudden, he has to try so much harder.
And you're overcorrecting constantly, which,
Yeah. So I'm excited to see what happens when they finally open up servers for him. But that's what we're seeing across schools too, is people used to play on potatoes, people used to play on these terrible computers that barely function. And now we're finally getting to a point where it's equalized. I mean, I know so many 10-year-olds who have computers that are like, oh yeah, it's only $1,500. 10, I don't have $1,500 when I was 10. But now that's become just what is normal when you're getting into esports. Okay, there's one large down payment. Most games nowadays are free. Another thing, did not happen when I was a kid. That was like $60 plus. Everything was plus. Because they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have 60 LCs. We're only gonna rob another 60. Now everything's free to play, and don't get me into microtransactions because they're robbing kids nowadays. But that makes it a lot more accessible for parents in order to get their kids into games and say, okay, I only have to pay this once. You're gonna really enjoy Christmas this year.
Yeah, and then like the onboarding for like the schools. So like they're investing, because a lot of these libraries and schools are underused anyway. So when they soup up those computers for that, and then you got kids like, oh, I got a VR headset, and then you onboard them already. They already got the computers already got like a 1080, a card in it. Hey, you'll get a rip, get it going. And now with the Quest, they're spinning the Quest to be its own console, so it's competing with the Xboxes and the PlayStations, and competing with the attention. So like everybody's attention span is like just kind of divided across different games. So yeah, it's going to get super interesting in the next 12 months.
Definitely. And one other thing with the hardware is notoriously it's been Intel, for people who are into computers, that have done all the good processors. And in the last 2 years, 3 years, AMD has really been coming up and stepping up their game and putting out this really, well, honestly, huh?
Pun intended.
And putting out this gear that is so cheap compared to Intel and actually performs at a higher margin when you benchmark them. So that's actually something one of my classes is doing, is we're benchmarking between the two to verify, because I don't really trust everything on YouTube. But you have things like the i9-9700K that Intel's putting out, that's about $1,000. Then AMD just put out their new 3700X, and that's only about $300. All of a sudden it's become much more accessible and much cheaper in order to build these computers. And you go on Amazon, man, you can find crazy things on either Black Friday or Amazon Day, or Prime Day, that's what it's called. I bought 2 computers, it was less than $2,000, and these computers can handle pretty much any game at very high FPS.
Great. Yep. Question?
So like with esports today, like streaming platforms are like really important in terms of getting visibility and getting money into there. So how do you see kind of the future of VR streaming and like what that might look like and what kind of differences that there would be?
Yeah, so like streaming in VR in its current form is really hard. I try it all the time. I do it all the time, and it still comes out as a 2D video. But I would like to have people like sitting next to me as I'm playing the game. We're in a crowd. So yeah, so when you add things like I talked about before, spectatorship, where the spectator is not just like a 2D screen, but you actually bring them into your game as a multiplayer game. So now we have stuff like cloud-based servers where I can have 1 million people, not 1 million, I won't say 1 million, but 1,000 people in one game session. They're not playing, but they're a part of the stream, but in real time. I feel like that stuff is like right around the corner. I mean, that's some stuff that we're building right now too. Third person, spectator cameras and stuff like that for broadcasters. So like if you have a game and your game needs to be broadcasted, like what does it look like in VR, or what does it look like on a 2D screen? How do you broadcast? How do you shoutcast it? And it isn't VR. Other people are just watching it on a 2D screen, switching cameras and stuff like that. So all that stuff is coming like real soon. Just keep your eyes out.
And when it comes to spectatorship, it also is going to follow the trend. So really, if we want to get VR streamable, what we need to do is we need to have everybody who wants to watch having their own VR set at home, be able to plug that VR set in, and actually being able to watch the stream in 3D rather than on a 2D screen. So then they can be experiencing the VR from the spectatorship as opposed to watching a little screen on Chrome like you do with Twitch or Mixer nowadays. And that's just going to come as it rises in popularity, because you need everybody having that VR set at home in order to then create the platform that they're going to be linking in using their VR set to watch other people playing a VR game. So it's just sort of this like set of steps, and we're just very early on in it. The sky's the limit when it comes to technology, because it's really just how much creativity you have. So that's not crazy difficult to program. It's just if we can really find the sourcing for it and the funding for it.
Yeah, and it comes from the ground too, like from the design of the game. Like the spectator has to be in mind. You just can't like design the game like, oh yeah, but what about the people? So there's a lot of people watch football and basketball that can't play it, but they know everything about it because they're learning of the game. They spectate the game. That's the same thing that happens in VR. Like there's a lot of people who won't play VR physically, but they'll know everything about the game. But it's up to us as designers to design that into the base, the root of the game.
Another question? Yes.
So what are you guys thinking about sponsorships and product advertisements in terms of esports and VR? And have you thought about that?
Yeah, sponsorships are good.
Yes.
Seriously, we love sponsors. But I think in VR, it can take a different form. And so when you look at sponsorships in regular esports, right? So as a game designer, you have to design. So like there's jerseys that look like soccer jerseys, and there's logos all over. So like when a person designs a jersey for an esports player now, so he's designing he's designing from the waist up, as our model can show us here. So, but as a VR esports player, you're gonna have people playing in like arena size courts where their whole body is exposed. So now you have to like actually kit them out in a real kit. So from shoes, whatever. And then we have different needs than a regular gamer. That's, you know, he's sitting at his desk, mouse and keyboard, or game controller. Like the Quest has a 2-hour battery life, but what if we in the game for longer than 2 hours? So now we got to have a shirt or some kind of you know, I just see like me as a designer and building a league. Like I'm trying to design everything from like, we don't want soccer jerseys. We want something different. Like we are VR. It has to look different. So like, what if you had like a battery pack that was built into your collar and you can just stream through? It's like, that's the stuff that we need. Like we don't, so like, and also like, just like the mesh of a garment should be closer to like a tennis player than a soccer player. So there's a lot of different things, even the athlete. So you have people, okay, I'm an athlete, I retired years ago. But these same people that retire can also like start another career playing in VR. So you can play VR until you just like, you don't want to play it anymore. So you'll get a different type of body like over time. You might have these like elongated bodies that look kind of like a cross between like a motocross player and a tennis player, or it could be, you know, just different body types that go with the game. So yeah, it's gonna be real different. But yeah, sponsorship, like it goes beyond just like logos and things. I feel like there's like technology where you can put objects in a room that could be attached to an advertisement that doesn't look like an advertisement, but your gaze is triggering some kind of thing that you can get funds from. So yeah, there's different ways of funding. That's a way of funding.
What's the most popular VR game that's out right now?
I mean, from a Beat Saber is probably the biggest.
That's the.
I mean, that's yeah. I mean,
Game would probably be Beat Saber.
Yeah.
Game, probably VR.
Yeah, I mean, VR.
That's onward.
Yeah,
Onward, Work League basketball, Rec Room.
yeah,
No
like
man's
Rec Room,
Sky.
but what you call Rec Room, like a game. It's like,
One of the questions I was going to bring up is that every esport in the last 6 years that rose had a huge spike in shoutcasters led up to that, which we haven't talked at all about.
Yeah.
But Rec Room has actually begun to have shoutcast streamers for some of the competitive modes that are in it.
Yep.
That's the area I'd be curious to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And shoutcasting has definitely become, you know, huge. I mean, I feel like even, you know, a lot of the best shoutcasters, they're personalities, right? And a lot of really talented streamers, they often go into shoutcasting because, you know, they're just a huge personality. Like they're fun to listen to. They get you hyped and excited about the game.
They make a multiplayer game into a esports.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, it would just be awesome too at some point, you know, to see the same kind of trends with VR. You know, and being able to shoutcast VR games, you know, like Beat Saber, for instance. Yeah, this is my first, you know, kind of time ever playing Beat Saber, you know. But it would be so cool to like have someone just be like, you know, get super duper hyped about it and just like, you know, straight up shoutcasting, you know, Beat Saber competition kind of thing. Will, you're actually doing pretty.
oh yeah,
You're doing well. It's a lot of fun.
you know, this is a very tame beat right now. This is a very tame.
Another question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was curious, in terms of the children who are playing the esports, has any data been gathered in terms of how playing those esports is helping them with other programs in the curriculum?
I'm sure people have done a lot of research. I can't name any studies off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest, but I'm definitely, I'm sure, you know, and that's one reason why, high school. Oh,
Coming from a university in VR Lab and all that crap. What I saw, at least at our university, most of the students tend to be engineer students. So a lot of them do tend to have more of a technical knowledge and technical touch to computers and hardware and things. So they come with a better understanding to that stuff initially, so it's easier to teach.
And Robert Morris University in Chicago was one of the first ones to offer scholarships for esports. And then this is a control group where they had esports before they had scholarships. So to actually compare this, they did show that when they started using scholarships to recruit more people in, there was something like between like a half and a whole grade point jump.
Okay.
For people in the last 2 years of their schooling there. This was a thing from 2017, so I'm not going to remember where I saw it. But
Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
And esports tends to be, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult to involve just directly into a curriculum because it's so competitive. But there's so many different video games that you can use to supplement a curriculum that then can come out of or lead into esports. So I've been teaching Minecraft for years, and I'll teach so many different subjects just in one class. I have students, they learned area, perimeter, and volume all in Minecraft, and man, they're never going to forget that. Yeah, it was really fun. So it's just all these challenges, and they had to go through and solve each one. And by the end, it was like, okay, what's the formula? They're like, what formula? I'm like, how do you build it? They're like, length, width, height. I'm like, that's the formula.
But yeah, and I mean, yeah, just to touch on that too, like, one reason I got into gaming in general was, before I worked for Sensei, I actually taught English in Okinawa, Japan, on the rural sugarcane fields. And my every single one of my classes, and even when I was back in school, I would I just feel like you're so much more likely to remember knowledge if you can link it to a specific event, like a game you played in class or something like that. And that's how I would teach my students. I would just play games with them all day, every day, and just design random games for them. And I think that's what kind of got me interested in esports and gaming in general, because I just realized, I'm playing games with my students all the time, and I think, and that's something also that I'm personally really passionate about. I think it's amazing that these days kids can actually get scholarship money for and monetize their skills for being good at video games, which is something my parents would just been like, there's no freaking way, 10 years ago or whatever. But I just think it's incredible that you can really monetize your skill and put it towards something like your education that's gonna, in the long run, end up making you a better, more well-rounded, contributing member of society, right? So I think that's incredible. But
Yeah, within the educational field, you start. It's just
sorry, I don't know how much time we have left, so maybe we should DJ.
Maybe two more questions.
Two more questions.
5 minutes.
All right, two more questions. Anyone who hasn't asked a question that we would like to ask a question? All right, we're coming with friend. What's your name, by the way?
Eric,
Eric.
can you talk about the flow of money in esports? Who's providing money? What do people get? Not just students, but what do schools do? Where do they get their money from? Where do they give it? Who do they give it to? Where do the developers get money from? And so on.
Definitely. Well, developers, I think for developers it's an easier question. There's a lot of in-game, in-app purchases that are mostly they're mostly aesthetic things. Fortnite, for example, you can buy all kinds of goofy, crazy things to make your character stand out. You can get like a T-Rex hat or something, right, for your character. Same with League. You can buy a bunch of aesthetically really cool skins, and I'm guilty of it. I've purchased far too many of those things, just because they make my character look cool. So that's where publishers get their money from, I think. And then as far as flow of money in esports, colleges have budgets, and their budgets for their esports programs, they can range anything from I was talking to a school over in the UK, and their budget was like £400, and then you have other people who have obviously larger budgets for esports, but I think how much money they get and how much funding they get for their program entirely hinges on, obviously someone needs to come up with the idea, to take like to take that sort of idea and see to their board of education and pitch it to the university and pitch it in a way that that universities are going to be able to visibly see the value that it's going to bring to their colleges, whether it's fulfilling recruitment quotas, that sort of thing, or even as we touched on earlier, being able to bring your students hands-on experience in social media and technical design, that sort of thing.
Yeah, one of the biggest flows of money from the pro level is actually like sponsorship. I mean, from like non-endemic and endemic sponsors, bring money in, and that money flows into the coaches and the players. In those leagues, kind of like Overwatch League. Overwatch League has a franchise model where like each city has a franchise, and each owner has to buy a piece of the league through the franchise. And I think the buy-in is something like $16 million or something like that, something crazy. But like each player, but there's rules though. So each player has to get paid $60K. They got to have a 401k, insurance, benefits, and all that type of stuff. So like you got like people playing games as a career. So you have to have those traditional structures that actually to get people to buy into it for the long term.
Second question, and sure, maybe we can do two real quick. We'll see. If we can answer fast.
Where do you see or hope to see the future of VR esports in the next 5 years?
Ooh man, in the next 5 years, I would love for someone like Riot Games, League of Legends. I'd like, I think they have the bandwidth to be able to do it. Like they already host events at arenas like Madison Square Garden. I think it would be awesome if they could at some point, project the Rift onto, Madison Square Garden basically, and have players physically competing, in VR in person. But I think that's also one of the biggest challenges right now is rendering, and one of the barriers for VR into esports actually is like having space to be able to play essentially, because you think of a game even like as simple as like Mario, like Super Mario Brothers, like rendering that in in like the real world. Some people don't realize like it's literally a game of a dude running straight for just like ever basically. That's what levels are. They're really long, really far.
Sorry, we're not kicking you out.
Okay, thank you.
At 8 o'clock, it just automatically kicks off for the environment.
Gotcha.
We'll turn it on right away.
Yeah, good stuff. But yeah, so in 5 years, I hope that I hope to see big name publishers and even small name publishers. I think a realistic goal in 5 years would be just to have coachable, highly competitive, more mainstream, popular games in esports.
So,
Yeah.
So,
I wanted to finish.
Yeah, go for it.
So like 5 years, I want to. I'm just speaking into existence. I want to see this. 5 years, we have like location base is huge with VR. So we're gonna have teams, just like I was trying to talk about. Franchising is gonna be a big thing too. High school sports, like the two sport athlete is gonna be like I play basketball and I play like Beat Saber. Like that's gonna be interesting. And I think that's one of the things I want to see too. As an athlete that played 3 or 4 sports in high school, like end up breaking bones because it was like pretty much burnout at the same time. So what if I didn't do that? What if I just only focused on one physical virtual one? I could probably be in the NFL right now still. So. Who knows? So this thing, so and then you would have like the native. I would say 5-10 years from now, the native VR person where like his first sport is a VR sport. Like he never played basketball or football. I want to do that. And and then it's kind of the ball keeps rolling. I want to see esports kind of get off the sponsorship. Get away from the sponsorship and try to build its own ecosystem of how to sustain itself outside of sponsorship. Like we always need sponsorship. Basketball, football, all this stuff kind of builds around sponsorship, but that shouldn't be like the goal. I mean, that shouldn't be the ultimate driver. What else? 5 years, 10 years from now, hey, I want to see like the Super Bowl of VR. I want to see the Super Bowl.
All right, thank you guys, awesome conversation. Let's finish up, we're gonna do some more networking demos and the semis and finals of Beacon Saber is coming up.